Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the C Files. Welcome to the real world. Say, why do you always play soothing, smooth music and not the fast-paced, upbeat music that a lot of people play? Well, because we live in a high-paced, high-stress, fast-paced world. You get that all day long. This helps to settle things down a little bit and bring us into a mindset of meditative thought so that we can begin to consider the deeper things of life and the deeper things of world events. And slow down, take our time, think through things without any kind of irrational, emotional human reaction to the things that we see occurring around us. And so this music by David Helping from the album Sleeping on the Edge of the World, with a song titled All Things End. And if you enjoy this kind of music, I recommend his music. Helps us to come into that reflective form of thinking. We're going to talk about Klaus Schwab and World Economic Forum and Davos Group and the Bilderberg Group and Bohemian Grove, and the International Monetary Fund, and the Council of 300, and these top 1% elites who want to dictate to the rest of us how we are to live, what our morality should be, what we are to do in society. And I'm going to talk about a little bit of the economic side of that, and we're going to talk a little bit about the social side of it. So let's go ahead and get started for just a few moments and talk about these very needed subjects. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe, share the video, hit that bell for notifications, and I appreciate your support. And I appreciate your support for any individual that yearns for freedom and yearns to overthrow or to throw off the heavy yoke of oppression that comes from the entities that I had mentioned earlier, like the World Economic Forum and like the large corporations that want to basically replace governments with their use of terms. In other words, we don't need the laws of governments anymore when we have use of terms of corporations, and we have guidelines on social media corporations that regulate our behavior. And this really begins at the first point that I'm going to make, is that what they're doing is they're trying to create a world where these corporations, in cooperation with the World Economic Forum, which Klaus Schwab is the founder and head of, are trying to create a world where you can kind of eliminate the boundaries of nations and have a corporate world where corporations run everything, including our social behaviors. Let's begin with an economic side and really how all this began. It really began with a concept that's found in the scriptures, which, by the way, this is my guide for morals and ethics. This is my guide for philosophy and religion and how I live my life. This is my foundation and my guide for those things. And this condemns paganism. But what do the corporations and the World Economic Forum and all of that want? They want us to live as pagans. Not only to live as pagans, but to live as pagans that are under their authority. A form of economic and social slavery that they would like to put us under. And that's why you see so many things like these pollution credits. I can't remember what you call them, but these economic credits of where if you pollute too much, you can buy credits off of a company or a corporation that abides by the demands of these environmental powers to be, and they give you credits, so you paid them money to get credits. This is something that's going on in California right now and Canada, and some nations have adopted this, but just an example of how they can begin to control things. If you look at the car industry right now, the car industry is falling apart. Repossessions are sky high in the car industry. Even used dealers are having trouble selling the cars off the lots, and so they're having to keep the cars longer, which causes more problems with them as far as the financing of the cars. And even they can be subject to repossessions from banks and other entities that deal with these used car lots. Even new car lots may even have this issue and this problem. So we begin to see this economic breakdown. And it began with this concept of usury that's in the Bible, which I mentioned earlier. And usury is simply the use of interest rates in financing. The Bible condemned heavy interest rates in financing. As a matter of fact, the Bible is not real big on financing at all. The Bible teaches out of the book of Proverbs that the borrower is slave to the lender. The concept is if you want something, save up the money or save up whatever method of payment that particular society uses, and use that to pay cash for that item. We don't finance anything here. And the only thing that we've bought on finance and since we've learned these concepts has been this house. And I don't consider this a debt, I consider it an investment, because the value of the home has gone up when we have over $100,000 in equity in the home. And if I ever ran into a situation where I couldn't pay for the mortgage, which I don't see happening, but if it were to happen, I would just simply put the home on the market, sell it, and walk away with money in my pocket. But you can't say that about a car or furniture or a big screen television or whatever else you might finance in order to have, because you don't really believe in delayed gratification. You want it now, you want to keep up with the latest and greatest, and so you finance everything. And then came along credit cards. Credit cards, to me, are satanic. They're devilish. They're pure evil. And they fall right into the principles of usury that are used by organizations like the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, large banks that have ripped customers off for many, many years now. Part of the system that's being used to bring about economic slavery for people, or to turn people into economic slaves, is the credit score system. FICO, right? The three main credit score agencies like TransUnion and so forth. And people have focused the mind on the score, the credit score, rather than focusing their mind on how do we really begin to develop wealth for the family and generationally develop wealth for our children and our grandchildren. How do we do that? Is buying, getting credit cards because you get miles on your airline tickets or whatever, free airline miles, whatever. Is that a method of gaining wealth? There was a book written called Everyday Millionaire, and they did the most extensive and most amazing research on millionaires that's ever been done. And the conclusion that they came to was that no one ever became a millionaire off of airline miles on credit cards. Never happened. So why do they do that? It's a strategy to get you to buy into the usury system of the credit card. And so they sell you on the concept of credit. Well, you can't do anything without credit. Did you know that there's a mortgage company out there called Churchill Mortgage that will finance a home even if you don't have a credit score? They underwrite it themselves. Guess who I used to buy this house? Churchill Mortgage. But the point is, the lies that have been told to the general public concerning these things is anathema. It's of the devil. It's evil. So, opting out of being a slave to credit scores and saying, you know what? I'm not financing anything ever again other than buying an investment like a house. But I'm never again financing a car, never again financing furniture or anything like that. That goes a long way toward an act of defiance and rebellion against what I consider to be a satanic system of paganism pushed by the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, and the big banks. Big corporations are involved in this as well, but they use what's called a social credit score to push their narrative. Human resources is the new legislation that governs the people. Because how do you find work? How do you find a job unless you cooperate with what human resources has to say? If they demand that you violate your principles, your morals, your standards, your ethics, in order to work for their company, in other words, if they're telling you in no certain terms, they won't say the term paganism, but basically that's what they're selling. If you don't become a pagan, you can't work here for us. And this is a widespread thing. Now, today we call it wokeism, if you will. If you're not woke, you can't work here. If you don't use the right pronouns, if you don't believe in LGBTQ month, if you don't morally accept transgenderism and all of this, if you have any moral, ethical, mental opposition to that, even if you don't verbalize it, but you act it out by resisting that which is evil, then we don't want you working for our corporation, and we will we will put the word out to all the other corporations. And you'll be homeless. Wow. That's more effective than any law of government that's ever been written. And this is exactly what Klaus Schwab wants as he wrote his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution. I read Schwab's books because they really tell me what the enemy is doing. Know thy enemy, right? I have Sun Tzu here, or Sun Tzu, I meant to say. I've got Rise of the Fourth Reich, a book right there. The Council of 300, Sun Tzu. I've got The Great Reset. And I've got another book written about the book of the Great Reset. I mean, I read this stuff because it informs me as to what is happening in today's world. And I can tell you right now that the people who push these narratives are anti-Bible. And they're anti-God's principles and God's laws and God's truth. So you go on social media to complain that these corporations have become heathenistic pagan corporations, pushing satanic agendas. But you run into what's called community guidelines in the big mega social media corporations. And those guidelines say, you can't say that, you cannot do that, we'll give you a warning, then we're going to give you a strike, then we're going to eliminate your ability to voice your opinion and your thoughts, your free speech on our platform. That means they're acting as an editor on behalf of the corporate paganism that they want to push onto the world. And so, this is the world, this is the society that we end up living in. How do you resist such a society? The same way that the early Christian martyrs resisted. Have you ever read the Book of Martyrs? Fox's Book of Martyrs? If you haven't, get it and read it. They resisted. They would not cooperate. They would not sit down and shut up because it was contrary to their moral, ethical standards to do so. So we don't sit down and we don't shut up. And we get really smart about how we stand for moral and ethical principles that are righteous and holy and good. We get really smart on how we oppose paganism. And this is what we have to do. We don't react to things out of irrational human emotion. We contemplate, we think, we strategize, we use tactics, and we sneak in the back door of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and we start messing with the machinery, and we start changing things around so that when the final production comes out, it's something completely different from what they intended. We infiltrate, and we don't allow them to shut us up because they want to push a pagan society, and we don't want to live under a pagan society. So, I don't participate in credit scores financial credit scores or social credit scores. I could care less about them. I don't participate in them. And I'm doing just fine. Why? Because there are alternatives, and that's what they want to shut down. The attempt during the last pandemic, if you will, was the idea of shutting down mom and pop's stores deemed to be non-essential that did not play the game. Wait, they're providing jobs for people and they're not going by our HR guidelines? They're not doing what the World Economic Forum has pretty much dictated to corporations all over the world that they are to do? They're skirting on the radar? They're getting away with this? Oh, no, we can't have that. We got to shut them down. Like the old show with the sheriff that says, boy, we're going to shut you down. You know, talking about the shut down the bar or whatever, you know, and some of the old movies and TV shows. I don't know. If you're old enough, you remember that. So anyway, and boy, they didn't say that in the sense of any kind of a racial term. That the context in the movie was, that was this common terminology in their culture and their society to someone of their same race. It's just, Deep South back in the day, everybody was called that. I mean, there was terminology I grew up with in the South that would be considered, and I'm not talking about derogatory terms, I'm just talking about normal language that today would be very offensive to a lot of people. But they didn't mean anything offensive by it. So, anyway, this is part of what I'm talking about, where they're restricting language. Do you understand that when they restrict language, that's a means to an end? And the means is to cage in thought. And if you go outside of that cage of thought that they put you in, then you get punished. It's a means to social and community slavery of thought. Not physical slavery, but the slavery of the mind. One other thing to understand and recognize. Economics drives the world, okay? Money, by whatever form it might be, oil, paper dollar, gold, commodities, whatever form money comes in, that's what drives the world. And if you can control the money, this is Klaus Schwab's theory, if you could control the money, you can control the world. Turns out you can't control the individual that well, though, because people yearn for freedom. And when they begin to understand what's happening, that they've been put into a cage, they want out of that cage. Now, some people are comfortable in the cage, and okay, if you want to live in a cage, that's nothing anybody can do about that other than try to wake you up to the fact that you've just locked yourself into a cage. But they drive everything, including wars, and we'll end it with this. Including wars. Now remember, this is how the real world works, and I'm telling you how the real world works in today's society. They drive wars, and how do they get a war going? Well, when you get a populace that doesn't want to go to war, they don't want anything to do with war, you've got to do something to stir them up emotionally and try to get them rallied up so that they will hate the other guy, and these guys over here will hate these guys, and you get them to clash with each other. Thus, Israel-Palestine. It's the latest one that we're seeing. And you finance both sides. They're financing Hamas, and they're financing the Israeli army, and they're saying, as we used to say in karate, in the karate tournaments, Ajime! Fight. Or as Big John used to say in UFC, you ready? You ready? Get it on! Remember that? And both sides start fighting. Well, guess what? I'm financing both fighters, and I'm betting on both fighters, and I'm going to win. Right? I'm going to win because I'm going to make a lot of money. It doesn't matter who wins. I got it arranged to whoever wins, I'm still going to make a lot of money. And that's what they're doing. They're stirring both sides up. I'm talking the World Economic Forum, I'm talking IMF, I'm talking the shakers and movers in the financial economic world who want power and control over our lives. They are putting out the propaganda for both sides. And you can't believe all the videos you see on X or, Truth Social or TikTok or even on YouTube, whatever it might be. I know YouTube has restrictions about showing violent scenes, and a lot of it's violent scenes. You can't believe a lot of that because we're living in an age and time and world of artificial intelligence, blue screens, right? Computer-generated images, and file footage from 5 years ago that they drag out and they put it on television and they say, oh, see? Now, they don't tell you it didn't happen yesterday. They just put the file footage with a story that happened yesterday, and your mind associates that video with what happened yesterday. And how dare they get all stirred up. And now you have pro-Palestinian, pro-Israeli, both sides clashing with each other, not just in the Middle East, but all over the world. Groups clashing in the streets. And these globalists, like Klaus Schwab, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and so forth, they absolutely love it because they're sitting there counting their money. Oh, look at these fools. We're going to finance both sides. We're going to make money. Why did the banks finance Ford and Chevy and Dodge and Toyota and Nissan? I mean, aren't they in competition with each other? Wouldn't they pick one and say, we're going to go with Ford and finance them? And the other bank goes, well, we're going to finance Chevy. And another one says, well, we're going to finance, Stellantis, which, by the way, was formerly, Chrysler is now under Stellantis, and Dodge is under Stellantis. If you don't know what Stellantis is, it's a car company. They don't do that. Oh, we're going to finance all of them. And if one goes down, another one's going to win. We don't lose. We repossess over here. We make a lot of money over here. We sell these assets off. We're the bank. We're Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life, right? I mean, that's what they are. So, that's the real world. So as you're getting stirred up, and pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, pro-Ukraine, pro-Russia, whatever it might be, they're kicking back, watching you laughing, going, they're never going to be where we are because they don't know how the game's played. They're just going to keep getting all stirred up, fighting each other, divide and conquer. It's the oldest trick in the world. We're going to divide them, pit them against each other. We'll make all the money off of them, and we will conquer them. Both of them. You don't think that the banks don't own Israel, and the banks don't own Palestine, and the banks don't own Hamas? That's how the real world works. And that's the way it is in the real world. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll have more. We'll see you next time on the C-Files.